But Rosalind, you have a question for our candidates. What would you like to ask?
I would like to ask you both, if you are fortunate enough to be elected, what will you do for us re the cost of living?
Andrew, I'll start with you.
Thanks, Rosalind. Over the last couple of years, every single person in Australia has become 9% poorer. But in regional areas, it's worse. It's far worse. And I've been door-knocking businesses. I've had people break down in tears. And I've door-knocked homes and I've seen people just with their household budgets in absolute despair. We know you have to manage the economy to fix cost of living. We also know crazy expenditure out of Canberra means that the Reserve Bank of Australia will continue to put the pressure on mortgage holders in order to deal with inflation. We can't waste any more money as a country and have everybody under enormous pressure. I mean, it's been absolutely shocking. So you do need to manage the national finances well. You do need to ensure that those finite resources go into valuable things like creating jobs with public infrastructure in our region, which is why I want to see stimulus with things like the Princes Highway and local roads to get our local economy going again. And as part of this, we can't be handing out $13 billion to billionaires in the green hydrogen space or the critical mineral space. We can't be wasting $450 million dividing our country around issues like the voice and think that this is a good place for our country to be. We need to manage the finances, manage the money, and then start to get our household budgets and our small business budgets back on track.
Kate, cost of living, how do you handle it?
Certainly the number one thing that every time I have a conversation with community members, doesn't matter whether we're talking about young people or whether we're talking about elder Australians, the stresses on family budgets are the thing that is absolutely top of mind. And seeing the kind of stress and distress in hardworking people who are just trying to keep roofs over their head, feed the kids and be able to, to imagine a better and brighter future, it's pretty tough. So I definitely hear that and I absolutely empathise. The biggest bucket out of cost of living pressures is certainly housing. And that's the conversation that I think as a country we really need to be having. As a parent of 3 teenagers, I really want them to be able to aspire to be able to live a life that is equal or better than their parents and grandparents. And this is the very first generation that are really looking down the barrel of struggling with that. When we look at the pressures on housing, yes, we need mortgages to come down. We need inflation to be under control, and we need for that incredible experience that we have had over the last political cycle of all of those interest rate cycles to be able to be tempered and to start come down. But we really need to be looking at housing supply and housing affordability to be able to actually tackle the number one pressure that most families are facing. And the honest conversation is that 2/3 of our population, either the people who are mortgage holders or who've paid off their home, they don't want to see housing increase to the point where they are worried about the value of their principal investment that they have worked so hard to be able to afford. And so we really need to be having much more creative conversations about how we increase housing supply without risking the value of people's principal assets. And I just don't hear those conversations happening from either side of politics, who are really talking about very small fixes for what is a really fundamental problem. It's taken a couple of cycles. So I think we need to be looking at affordable housing. I think we need to be looking at more innovative things around modular homes, around granny flats, around tiny homes, around build to rent, around land lease schemes. There are so many ways in which we can increase supply without having this risk to the broader economy. And I just don't hear that conversation happening in politics at the moment. That's where I'd be spending a lot of my time and energies early on.
All right, thank you, Rosalind. A host's prerogative as a follow-up. If it came down to a scenario, minority government, and as an independent, you'd be in a position to help things happen or to knock things off. Where are you on, say, things like negative gearing, all of the taxation stuff that certainly people like the Greens overtly would like to see removed? How would you vote on that in a federal parliament?
I think that for both of our major parties to have taken off the table tax reform for a couple of cycles now is absolute madness. So as a community independent, you have got the opportunity to look at every bill on its merit, to listen to the people of Gilmore and to be able to reflect their interests and concerns. So when you are looking at issues around the impact of negative gearing on the housing, as a small business person, I have to tell you, there is no other tax system that allows you to run at a loss and be rewarded for it. I've got absolutely no problem with mum and dad investors and the role that they play in our housing, but that needs to be limited to 1 or 2 homes. It doesn't need to be on your 5th, your 6th or your 7th. Just ask all the politicians who are sitting on very tidy, on very tidy property portfolios. We need to start unravelling some of that and bring back the fairness and the incentive into our housing system for young people.